It's Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, and this morning we've got almost Hurricane Francine. By the time you're watching this, Hurricane Francine churning out here in the Gulf of Mexico. Doesn't look extremely healthy at this moment. Yesterday we were looking at this thing and it was kind of exploding with tons of activity around that central area of low pressure, and we're starting to see some new convective towers build up right now. But look, most of that convection, most of that activity that really kind of formed around the center of the storm yesterday has blown off to the north and east, and this shows that there's a little bit of disorganization down here. It has to do with the wind shear that we talked about yesterday, and also this huge wedge of dry air that is sneaking around into the storm. And this is one of the many factors that's going to lead to this thing struggling to become a major hurricane. Otherwise, Hurricane Francine would very easily become a Category 3, Category 4, maybe even higher storm on its approach to Louisiana, just simply because of the massive amounts of ocean heat content that we have in place. Our saving grace is going to be those upper level winds that carry a lot of that convection off like we've been seeing. However, as the storm does inevitably get stronger, it's going to maintain the ability to keep a lot of that energy around the core, and it is going to strengthen before it makes landfall. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center. As you can see, winds around 65 miles per hour, gusts around 75. By the time this video goes up, there's probably going to be another update, and it could be a hurricane by the time that update comes out, meaning winds are probably closer to where the gusts are right now. But we do expect this to become a Category 2 hurricane, maybe by early in the morning on Wednesday, and then it's going to try to make landfall as a Category 2 somewhere in Louisiana. There's still a chance that it's going to try to weaken a little bit before it makes landfall, but there's also a chance that it's actually going to strengthen more than what this forecast suggests before that weakening phase starts to happen. So we really need everybody to be prepared for a significant hurricane impact on Wednesday, as there's no turning back now. This is not wrong. There's no major changes to the forecast that are going to happen as far as the trajectory goes. There's little changes, but there's definitely going to be a hurricane in Louisiana. And that's why we have widespread tropical storm watches, warnings, and hurricane warnings now in portions of Louisiana. And the tropical storm watches and warnings expand into Mississippi and back down towards Texas as well. One of the things that we're starting to get really concerned about here with Hurricane Francine is the storm surge. Okay, so this is going to hit an area that is very susceptible to storm surge. Life-threatening storm surge is possible. Late in the day on Tuesday and then all the way through the day on Wednesday. 5 to 10 feet of storm surge in the Vermilion Bay area could lead to water inundation inland up to 20 to 30, maybe even 40 miles. So this is going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of people, and it's for that reason that we have mandatory evacuations in place in several zones in a couple different parishes in south central Louisiana. So this is one of those things where you've just got to pay attention to your local officials. If they're telling you to get out of there, you probably should. We've seen too many instances where somebody will say, oh, well, I've lived through a hurricane before, I'm going to be fine, and then there's something different about this hurricane that didn't happen in the last one, and it causes the water to come up your canal, come up your alley, and now you need rescued, and somebody's got to put their life in danger to come get you out of there when we told you way ahead of time to not be there. You know what I mean? So if you live in a flood-prone area, or even if you don't, if you live in a mandatory evacuation area, please get out of there if you can. I understand it's a difficult thing, but we've got lots of warning time and lots of lead time leading up to this. You've got time to make your preparations. All right, let's talk about the latest model data coming out of the HAFSA. This thing still looks like it's going to strengthen quite a bit all the way up until early in the morning on Wednesday, where we're going to have maximum sustained winds probably somewhere in the 90 mile per hour region, maybe even up there into the 100 mile per hour region. Gusts certainly well over 100 miles per hour. And then I think probably from around 8 a.m. Wednesday and then going forward until this thing makes landfall sometime in the afternoon on Wednesday, we're going to see a period of time where the storm doesn't necessarily increase in intensity. It either stays the same or it weakens on its approach to landfall, which should happen sometime around 2 p.m., 5 p.m. Eastern. And the vast majority of the strongest winds are going to be happening during this time, somewhere between Marsh Island and then, of course, down towards Homa. There's going to be some strong tropical storm force winds as far inland as, of course, New Orleans, maybe even all the way up there towards Baton Rouge. But those really strong winds where we could see gusts over 100 miles per hour are specifically going to be in the Vermilion Bay area, Marsh Island, Morgan City, Homa, those places. So make sure you guys are prepared for that. The wind field significantly decreases as we go through the day on Wednesday. Of course, we're still going to have some very strong winds, maybe even in extreme southwestern portions of Mississippi over there near Bay St. Louis. By 8 p.m., we could still be talking about 50, 60, 70 mile per hour winds here. And then this no longer is a wind problem as we get into the day on Thursday, and it's more of a heavy rain and still a storm surge problem. Once this thing gets downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical storm, the threats kind of shift a little bit. And let's zoom out and talk about that a little bit. This is what the HRRR says the radar could look like as we go into the future. HRRR model is not the best at predicting hurricanes or simulating them. However, it is important that we look at this because this is probably pretty close to what the radar will look like. Here we are as early as 9 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday. We're going to start to see those strong winds and the hurricane to tropical storm force type conditions moving into Louisiana. But look at how far-reaching those storms are, all the way over into the panhandle of Florida. This is where we could see some heavy rain and, of course, some isolated tornado problems. In fact, I think that in New Orleans, point south, in that very southeastern part of Louisiana, in the morning on Wednesday into the early afternoon, we're going to have a pretty significant tornado threat. So that's one of the things that we'll have to watch out for. That's not just the wind and the storm surge associated with this storm. And then, of course, flash flooding becomes a big problem as this thing kind of slows down a little bit right upon landfall. It's going to start going much quicker, though, as we go into the day on, late Thursday into Friday. But this is still going to bring a lot of rain to a lot of people. Thankfully, it's needed in a lot of the places that it's coming. And yeah, the Storm Prediction Center is already highlighting a slight risk of severe weather on the day 2 outlook, mostly for that tornado threat down there. However, we can't rule out some hail and some wind back up there into the Rockies, maybe all the way over there towards Oregon. But the tornado threat's what's driving that slight risk down there in Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi, and extreme southern Alabama. All right, looking even farther into the future, the European model shows landfall happening around 5 p.m. on Wednesday. And of course, we've got the heavy rain and thunderstorms happening in Louisiana, moving into Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama, of course. By 5 a.m. Thursday, we're experiencing heavy rain all along the mid-Mississippi River Valley here. And at this point, we're no longer talking about a hurricane, right? We're talking about a rainstorm. Memphis, you guys are going to be dealing with this for a couple of days, actually. Look at how the low pressure system really unwinds and almost stalls out over the boot hill of Missouri. This is going to bring some pretty significant rainfall, I think, to places like Memphis, also southern Illinois, western Kentucky, places like that. I don't know if it's going to be a prolific rainfall event, but it's certainly going to be something that we have to watch out for some flooding. So keep that in mind. Also, watch what happens as we go even farther into the future. Lots of rain over there in Georgia and South Carolina and Florida. The energy from this hurricane gets kind of lofted over into the Atlantic Ocean, just to the south and east of the Carolinas, and it tries to reform a little bit, and we might see another semi-tropical system over here in the Carolinas as a result of this, bringing heavy rain and thunderstorms to the Outer Banks, into the mid-Atlantic regions as we get all the way over towards September 18th. So that's something to watch out for. The rest of us are very quiet. Outside of the impacts from Hurricane Francine, there's not a lot to talk about out there. Once again, the main inland impact that we're going to see from this is going to be the flooding, and it just happens to be right along the Mississippi Mississippi River there. The biggest threat's going to be that moderate risk in Louisiana and Mississippi, but even if you're all the way up there in southern Illinois, we've got a slight risk of excessive rainfall over the next couple of days. So if you live in a flood-prone area, make sure you are prepared for this. We ain't done after Francine. Our next storm is likely going to be on the radar right after that, as we do have a very high chance of another storm developing within the next 7 days over here in the main development region. There's two areas of interest that we're watching. Both of them, I think, have a chance of becoming our next storm, but as you can see, things are really starting to ramp up in the Atlantic, in the main development region, like we've been saying that they would. Hopefully, these aren't huge threats to the states. However, some of the guidance that we look at to try to predict these storms has shifted a little bit. Initial forecasts for both of these storms out here showed no question these are going to recurve out to sea, probably won't even hit Bermuda. But now we're starting to see a little bit more of a skew to the south. Some of the members of the GEFS ensembles here actually show an impact to the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic. So this is a very concerning look. If this is actually what happens, this is going to be a big time storm that we have to watch, entering favorable waters, the same area that Hurricane Beryl, took Category 5 status in. We really got to watch this now that we're starting to see that trend where these storms could potentially go a little bit farther west rather than recurving right up the Atlantic Ocean. But let's take it one storm at a time. Okay, we're going to get through Francine and then we'll talk about whatever's next. As far as the rest of us go, farther inland, things are going to be really above average in the central United States up towards the Great Lakes. We've been talking about this for a while. We've got a big ridge forming here. Things are going to be near normal simply because of the remnants of Hurricane Francine in the southeast. And then we're going to be downright chilly, much below average in the west. This is going to be a stark difference from what we've been seeing out there. So get ready for that over the next 6 to 10 days. All right. We are certainly live streaming tomorrow, Wednesday, September 11th. So make sure you turn notifications on and subscribe to the channel. We're going to be here probably starting in 4 or 5 hours before landfall. We'll be here 3 to 4 hours after landfall. And we've got something like 400 cameras. Obviously, we're working with Radar Omega. We're going to have the cyclone ports and the storm probes. And if you want to see this hurricane, I don't know if there's a better place to see it than right here on this channel. And of course, we're going to have our storm chasers and meteorologist Andy Heald, the whole 9 yards. We're going to try to provide some good coverage here for this hurricane. And hopefully it's nothing crazy and we'll move right on. And the next live stream that we do will be a blizzard or a nice snowstorm or something. But unfortunately, I think we're going to be dealing with the hurricanes for a little bit. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.